to seize power, to rule, and to govern. When we look at human history, we can see this ambition and desire in every society. The Ottoman Empire was no exception. Conflicts between brothers for the throne often led to bloodshed. Yet, one event occurred that had no equal or precedent in the world. In 1699, with the signing of the Treaty of Karlowitz between the Ottoman Empire and Austria, the empire lost territory for the first time, marking the beginning of its period of decline. Later, the Treaty of Passarowitz was signed, and Ottoman administrators began to realize that the empire had fallen behind Europe. A series of reforms were introduced, and Europe became a model to emulate, ushering in a new era known as the Tulip Period. However, with these reforms came an increase in luxury, extravagance, and consumption. Additional taxes imposed on the public led to growing social discontent, particularly directed toward Grand Vizier Nevzahirli Damat Ibrahim Pasha and his circle. Taking advantage of this unrest, a janissary named Patrona Halil gathered a group of fellow janissaries and led a rebellion. As the uprising spread, Sultan Ahmed III met the rebels' demands and abdicated the throne in 1730, passing it to his nephew, Mahmud I. Mahmud I had spent 27 years in confinement under the so-called Kafes system before ascending to the throne. When his father, Mustafa II, was dethroned in 1703 and replaced by his uncle Ahmed III, both he and his brother Osman III were confined to the palace's secluded quarters. During his years of confinement, Mahmud I developed himself through the education he received. Thanks to his intelligence, goodwill, and strong character, he excelled in his studies and cultivated a deep interest in literature, history, art, and music. When Sultan Mahmud I ascended the throne due to the Patrona Halil Rebellion, he was 35 years old. Coming to power at a difficult time, Sultan Mahmud I was forced to meet the demands of the rebels. In accordance with their wishes, he ordered the destruction of the mansions, pavilions, and entertainment venues built during the reign of Ahmed III. Statesmen and officials were replaced in line with Patrona Halil's demands. Patrona Halil had grown increasingly powerful within the Ottoman Empire and began to see himself as a state within the state. He interfered in every matter, disregarding the Sultan's authority. Although Sultan Mahmud I appeared to submit to the rebels, he was secretly planning their elimination behind the scenes. Finally, on November 15, 1730, Patrona Halil was invited to the palace under the pretense that he would be appointed Grand Vizier and Governor-General of Rumelia. As usual, he entered Topkapi Palace not with dozens of followers, but only with 2 of his men. However, it was a trap. As soon as he entered the palace, he was seized and executed by the royal executioners. Upon hearing of Patrona Halil's death, his followers started another uprising on January 28, 1731. Distrusting even his own guards, Sultan Mahmud I stepped out in front of the palace and called upon the people to fight against the rebels. Tired of constant chaos, the people responded to the Sultan's call and sided with him. Thus, the rebellion was swiftly suppressed. Nearly 15,000 rebels were lynched and killed overnight, restoring peace to Istanbul. The period that followed became, at least temporarily, a time of stability and relative prosperity for the Ottoman Empire. During his reign, Sultan Mahmud I managed to slow down the empire's decline to some extent. Under his rule, Serbia, Wallachia, and Belgrade were recaptured from the Austrians. Following the war with Russia, Russian pressure over Crimea was brought to an end. Additionally, a treaty signed with Nader Shah, one of the most powerful rulers in Asia at the time, secured the Ottoman Empire's eastern borders. In 1729, a French-born officer named Hambarisai Ahmed Pasha entered the service of the Ottoman Empire and initiated major reforms within the army. Under his leadership, the Bombardier Corps was modernized, artillery training was reintroduced, and production began on a new technology, the mortar cannon. These innovations played a significant role in the military successes achieved against Austria, Persia, and Russia. Sultan Mahmud I became the first Ottoman ruler to establish the imperial school of military engineering, Kara Mühendishanisi, thereby systematizing military engineering education in the empire. He continued the reformist policies begun by his uncle, Ahmed III, striving to sustain the innovations of the Tulip era. He also revived the printing activities that had ceased following earlier uprisings. In 1745, the first Ottoman paper factory, Yalova Paper Mill, Yalova Kajthanisi, was opened. Additionally, he established many new libraries, most notably the Hagia Sophia Library. Sultan Mahmud I was known as an intelligent, diligent, compassionate, patient, and determined ruler. He prioritized state affairs, personally attended palace meetings, and listened to the grievances of his people. He acted cautiously to avoid repeating the mistakes of his father and uncle. During the final 2 years of his 24-year reign, he fell seriously ill. What began as vascular dilation eventually led to severe bleeding. His condition worsened day by day, and he struggled even to walk. Meanwhile, his brother, Prince Osman, was living in the Kafes pavilion and secretly waiting for an opportunity to seize power. He began meeting frequently with viziers and other officials to plan a palace coup. He believed that if the palace physicians declared the Sultan no longer capable of ruling, he would be able to claim the throne for himself. As rumors spread throughout the palace, Sultan Mahmud I decided to appear before the public despite his severe illness. He wanted to show that he was still strong and firmly seated on the throne. On Friday, December 13th, 1754, with great difficulty, he mounted his horse and went to the Hagia Sophia Mosque, even though he could barely walk. The journey itself was almost an act of suicide. Indeed, on his way back to Topkapi Palace, he collapsed on the road and lost consciousness. Shortly afterward, his death was officially announced. His body was hastily washed and buried beside his father, Sultan Mustafa II, in the tomb at the new mosque, Yeni Cami'i. Immediately after the funeral, the new Sultan, Osman III, ascended the throne. However, that same night, a young Quran reciter who had been reading in the tomb reportedly heard muffled sounds and cries for help coming from the grave. Terrified, he rushed to the palace and told the officials what had happened. It was Sultan Mahmud's voice, he said. He wasn't dead. He was buried alive. The palace officials were stunned and immediately reported the situation to Sultan Osman III. Yet the new sultan, who had waited many years for the throne, did not take the matter seriously. He ordered the young reciter to be silenced at once, and the man was never seen again. Everyone who had witnessed the incident was exiled from the palace, and some of the officials involved were executed. However, according to the famous historian Ismail Haki Uzun Karsali, Sultan Mahmud I had not actually died. He had fallen into a deep coma. Believed to be dead, he was buried alive, and when he awoke inside the tomb, he called out for help, but no one listened. Thus, Sultan Mahmud I went down in history as the Ottoman Sultan who was buried alive.